3 Sundays in a row, we've heard of 3 miracles performed by Jesus. 2 Sundays ago, Jesus is preaching and teaching with authority in the synagogue. Everybody's amazed because he teaches with authority, because there is something about this man that is unlike any other. And this authority is manifested by the fact that he is able to tell an unclean spirit to depart from a man. And everyone, once again, is amazed of the power, of the authority he has to command unclean spirits. Although the man possessed by the unclean spirit did not ask to be healed, did not ask to be set free, did not go looking for Jesus. It just happened to be there. Last week, Jesus enters the house of Simon and Andrew, and they tell him that Simon's mother-in-law is in bed with a fever. So Jesus enters the room, gets close to her, holds her by the hand, and helps her up, and the fever leaves her immediately. Once again, this mother-in-law, this woman, is not asking for healing, but someone is. Simon and Andrew, James and John are asking him, you probably should do something because you can, because you have authority, you have power. And he does. Today, a leper comes to Jesus, approaches, gets close to him, falls on his knees, and begs him, if you wish, you can make me clean. That in itself, my brothers and sisters, is an amazing reality. A leper, we don't see leprosy as much anymore, but leprosy in the Scripture, in the biblical times, in the time of Jesus, in the time of the Old Testament, was probably the worst possible thing that could happen to you. The most dreadful, horrific illness that you could be struck with. Because it is an illness by which you gradually, progressively lose your body. Where it deteriorates, through your skin and your flesh begin to fall off, essentially. You become disfigured. It is a sickness highly contagious. So much so that, as we heard in today's first reading, if someone was found to have leprosy, if someone was found to even have the first signs of leprosy, he had to be examined by the priest. And if it was confirmed and declared that he had leprosy, he was to be cast out. He was to be isolated. He was to be distanced from the rest of the population because of the great danger that he posed. Because if leprosy begins to spread, it can quickly kill a population. And yet, what we witness today in this gospel is not a healing. This man, this leper, who approaches Jesus, who violates every expectation and regulation and directive, because he is told, because of what you have, you must stay away. And yet he comes close. He does not ask for healing. He asks for cleansing. He asks to be made clean. And this is very important because, if you allow me to say this way, because the body, our physical body, is not who we are. You are not your body. But your body is also not something that you have. You don't have a body. Your body, my body, is an intrinsic part of my identity. Because we are composed of spirit and body, both together. And our body, our physical body, is the manifestation, is the expression of our spiritual identity. And therefore, how can I see you? I see you through your body. But you are more than your body. But that's all I can see. And what are you that is more than your body? Your spirit, your heart, your mind. And ultimately, the fact that you have been created by God out of love, to love, in His image, after His own likeness. This is our identity. This is our reality, which can only be experienced in this life through our bodies. That is why what we do with our bodies is so important. It's not just whatever. Because our body expresses ourselves. And so in the Scripture, when you have a disease that gradually corrupts, gradually deteriorates, disfigures your body, immediately we should understand that it is an expression of an interior reality. That leprosy is really a spiritual matter. And it is the reality that we live with every day, which is that image which has been placed in us by God's love, the destiny to which we've been called. Through our actions and our attitudes, through our fears, through our plans and our ways of thinking, gradually we begin to obscure this image. We gradually begin to lose what it means to be a son, a daughter of God. We never truly lose it. But it can happen that it becomes so disfigured that it becomes very hard for us to recognize it in ourselves. And this is what makes a leper unclean, disfigured, impure, and what forces him into isolation and distancing, and with everything that carries with it. Over the past year, all of us have had experience of what it means to be isolated, of what it means to be distanced. We have been told that this is what we have to do, both if you are sick, so that you won't get anyone else sick, but also in case you could get sick, stay away, stay distanced, isolate yourself. And what happens? What happened? What happened to so many of us in our isolation, in our quarantine? What happened? What did we experience? Joy? Happiness? Well, I will tell you, especially, I say especially, although I'm sure it applies to everybody, but especially for the young people. What did it mean? First of all, absolute and insane boredom. Bored. What do I do? Children, I remember because we were doing the youth group back in March, and then suddenly there's no school. Kids were so happy. Oh my gosh, no school. No school for a week, no school for 2 weeks. Oh, it looks like we're going to get back April break. After 3-4 weeks, like, let's go back to school. I want to get back to school. I want to go back. Children saying they want to go back to school. Teenagers saying they want to go back to school. Forget about it. I mean, that's insane. Why? Because isolation from everyone, just with your own baby family, what does that mean? It means you have to deal with the one person you never want to deal with, which is yourself. How many of us live our lives in our routines, in our work, in our relationships, and I'm speaking of myself above all. How many of us live this life, which ultimately is a way of not having to deal with what is inside of me? Well, let me tell you, March of last year, April of last year, imagine the priest, I experienced something that I had not experienced before. And that was the incredible discomfort of being with myself. And having lost everything that I do in order to live. I couldn't even be a priest, if you want to call it that way. I couldn't say Mass. I couldn't see you. People didn't want to come see me. I was withering away. My spirit was withering away. Why? And this is connected to the reality of leprosy. Because what is in our hearts, many times, is death. is already that boredom, that sadness, the things that we don't like about ourselves. And this is what is expressed through leprosy, the decaying of the flesh, which makes us unclean, which makes us isolated. Even today, even if you live with a family, even if you can go about your life, how many of us are still in our hearts isolated? Why? Because there is something that I cannot control in me. But there is one who can, and that is Jesus. And so this leper risks everything. He violates every norm. He violates social distancing and isolation. Probably takes off his mask and just goes to Jesus. Says, if you want to, I know you can. I can't. I've tried. I couldn't do it. I cannot get out of me this problem. Help me if you want. The gospel says, moved with pity. Moved with pity means from the deepest, most profound place of his being, Jesus felt love for him and says, I want to help you. Be made clean. And immediately, the leprosy leaves him. But before he does that, before he says that, he stretches his hand and touches him. And what happens when you touch a leper? You get leprosy. What happens when you get leprosy? You become unclean yourself. But Jesus doesn't care. Jesus doesn't mind. Jesus stretches his hand and touches his wounds. That thing that keeps him isolated. That thing that keeps him in despair and lonely and alone. That thing which makes everyone want to run away from him. That thing that he wished he didn't have. Jesus touches it. And this is what the Lord wants to do in us. The first reading said, if somebody is found with leprosy, go and see the priest, that they can declare you unclean. Well, this leper goes to the priest, who is Jesus. But Jesus does not declare him unclean. Jesus cleanses him as the priest. And Jesus makes the sacrifice by touching him and taking upon himself his own sickness. And what happens at the end? This leper that was forced to live in isolation and distance and outside is now able to walk around freely. And Jesus is forced to go live in the desert. Jesus becomes the victim, replaces the leper, takes on the leprosy, so that this leper can be remade, refashioned, so that the image of God in him can shine once again. My brothers and sisters, this is what the Lord wants to do in us. For us today, whatever is our leprosy in our hearts, whatever is keeping us afraid, sad, and lonely, whatever we are ashamed of, whatever we hide from everyone and we wish we didn't have, that very thing is what the Lord wants to touch, what the Lord wants to enter into your cross. Because it is there that He wants to die for you, moved with pity, so that He can give you His own nature, so that today you can become a new person, so that you can become no longer isolated, no longer alone, no longer lonely, able to love, able to forgive, to have His nature. As we now will enter this week in the time of Lent, my brothers and sisters, let us reflect that the Lord invites us truly to recognize our leprosy. He invites us to approach Jesus, to fall on our knees, to really beg Him, recognizing that He can, if He wants to. And if you ask Him, He will say to you the same He said to the leper, I want to be made